Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the last video we had with stock images. I'll start to do about one of those per week, and if you guys like it, we'll make it the new regular style again. So let me know in the comments below which you prefer and how we could improve it. Happy birthday if today's your birthday, and on with the show. This happened many years ago in my old house. My now ex-husband and I had just moved into a nice house with our dog Cooper. He was a super friendly Cocker Spaniel who was great with children. Our neighbors, EP, had two young girls who loved to play with our dog when he was out front with us and through the fence if he was outside. It was a bit annoying since they would distract him from doing his business, so we would always look outside to see if they were outside before actually letting him out. And somehow they would always run out and yell, "Cooper!" It was really annoying, but no big deal. Things weren't so bad until one day we were working on the yard and had the garage door open. We left Cooper inside so we could actually get some work done. The girls came over and asked to play with Cooper. We said, "Not right now. He's inside while we work because we can't watch him." The girls said fine and left. When we were done, we went inside to eat lunch. I was taking a shower and getting dressed because I was going to meet up and go shopping with my mum. Apparently the girls saw we were inside and the garage door was open, so they just came inside, uninvited, to play with our dog. My husband was incredibly uncomfortable because these are two little girls he doesn't know in our home and he's alone with them. When I came out of the shower, I was like, "What are you two girls doing here?" They said, "Our mom said we could come inside and play with your dog." I said, "No, you need to go home. It is not okay for you to come inside our house by yourselves." I walked them to their house and spoke with the mum. I told her it was inappropriate for her to send her children to come into our home, uninvited, to play with our dog. They didn't know us, and that is very dangerous. The entitled mum said, "What? They just want to play with your dog, and I was busy, so I told them they could go." I again explained how they don't know us, and it's not okay to send children into a home of someone you don't know. She said, "Well then take your dog outside so they can play with them. It's not that hard." I honestly couldn't believe the things coming out of her mouth. I just kinda scoffed and said, "Please do not send your children to my house. They aren't welcome." The mum started saying something about us being rude and hating children. I don't know what, because I walked off. I thought this would be the end of it. It wasn't. A couple weeks go by. They constantly asked us to bring Cooper out, even as we were leaving our house. We always said no and even stopped bringing Cooper to the front yard to get away from them. It was an absolute nightmare. Always checking outside before doing anything to make sure they weren't there so we didn't have to deal with them. Then one day, I was home alone with Coop and these girls come and ring our doorbell. I was in the kitchen and I ignored them. I figured they would go away once they realized no one was home. Nope. I was stuck in the kitchen while they rang the doorbell over and over. They did this because it would rile Cooper up and they could play with him that way. Our door was a large glass door with iron design. They banged on the glass so much I was so afraid they would break it, but I didn't want to go and tell them because I just didn't want to deal with them. They decided to leave, and when I looked, I saw they had removed every rose from our gorgeous rose bush. Every single one of them. I was fuming. When my husband got home, we decided we both needed to go and speak to both parents. I told her what had happened. She got mad at me because I was home and didn't let her kids in. She said they wouldn't have done any of that if I just opened the door. I asked her why the girls came over to begin with. I had previously told her they weren't welcome. Then she tells me, "Well, I thought you weren't home, so I sent them over to play with your dog through the door like they always do. I needed to nap and they were being so loud. I needed them gone for a bit." We were just shocked at the words coming out of her mouth. My husband was equally shocked. He had no idea she was doing this. My ex-husband was a police officer and told her if it didn't stop, he was going to file a restraining order against the entire family. The father assured us it would be the last time and apologized over and over. The entitled mother saw nothing wrong with sending her children to our house while we weren't home, and even so, while we were home. She thought we were being absolutely ridiculous. Either way, the girls stopped coming over. Things were finally going well in our new home, and we were happy. Then, one day, my niece stayed at our house. While we were getting out of the car, the EM saw her and started yelling at us. It wasn't fair that she could play with Cooper but not her girls. I told her this was my niece and she was actually invited, as I quickly escorted my niece inside the house. I could hear the yelling continue, but turned the TV on loud to drown her out. The next thing I know, the two little girls are at our front door banging and yelling. I put Cooper in the kennel, opened the glass pad of the door, and told the girls to go home. They started crying, and the dad came out, apologized, and left. Before we could even get a restraining order, we saw they put a for sale sign on their front yard. They moved out and we never saw them again. To this day, anytime I read stories about entitled moms, I always think of this lady. I still can't believe it happened. I was so happy when they moved. The family who moved in had a son and a dog, and occasionally we would have puppy play dates in the front yard, but we never had issues with the kid coming over, thank goodness. When you're in your home, you should feel like you don't have to worry about anybody else in the whole world. The fact that there were these two little brats who would just wander into your house uninvited is terrifying. If you can't be safe in your own home from entitled parents and kids, where on earth are you supposed to be safe? In order for me to tell this as truthfully as possible, I need to go all the way back to the beginning. But the only problem is that I don't know when this all started. Me and my mum were always close, until I realized how entitled she is. And after that, our relationship started to crumble piece by piece until now, when there's practically a verbal war between us. I don't remember much about my childhood, and I'm starting to wonder if it's because I've locked those memories away, or because it was uneventful. But I do remember being happy, being scared, and being sad. I was a happy child, and was so until the summer of 2007. That's when my mum told me that she and my father would get divorced. Me and my father were never close. He was always working, and I was sleeping almost always when he got home, but there still was happiness and care between us. However, soon after the divorce, my mother started to paint pictures in my mind of how awful he was, and told me stories of all the bad things he'd done, and we got even more estranged over the years, and during these years, she got more and more entitled. Little about my mum. She always told me she worked as a manager for a box airliner and lived abroad for well over 3 decades, working and met my dad there. She has always been a Karen, but as a child, I thought it was normal. On the other side is my father, who grew up with nothing, much like I did, and built a steady career and got an education for himself, and was actually quite well off all of his adulthood. And he was the one who has always told me to have a plan B, and taught me the importance of having an income. And when I was 7, we set up a savings account. Every year, I got a letter from the bank, which stated how much friends and family had donated to my future, and how much the interest had gained, and the usual stuff, until one day, they stopped. 11 or 12-year-old me thought nothing of it, and after all, living in the age of technology, just laid it off as them moving in the online environment. Email was a concept unknown to me at the time, and I never asked why they stopped from either of my parents, because neither of them gave me a reason to suspect anything. It was the summer of 2018, and I asked my mum if she could notify the bank that I was now using email, when she turned it down by saying they don't use email. My father had died a year or so prior, and I had no way of confirming this, and ever since the divorce, we've been counting pennies for some reason, even though entitled mum is or was a manager and should get paid accordingly. Well, let's skip all the bull poop that led to this day and to my discovery. Now, my mum had been acting very suspiciously ever since me asking her to notify the bank, and said things like, "Oh, your father didn't leave a will," or "That poor man had what was coming to him. He most certainly wasn't poor." And these comments were what got me really suspicious, so I started to dig around. Oh boy, did I dig. I won't go to details here unless they're absolutely necessary for this post, just to keep some things private, but one of the biggest things was that my mum got the custody of me in not law-abiding means, and lost her job all the way back in 2012 for unprofessional behavior, and was living off child support and money gotten from my father. I also found out that the letters kept coming throughout the years, but she hid them, and ever since the death of my father, the bank has tried to contact me personally to discuss about the usage of the funds and how she has tried to access them. Well, as I didn't respond to the bank, the custody of the money went straight to whoever was my legal guardian, and they could spend the money at will, and she did. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from the bank, and she wasn't home, so I read it, and turns out she's been using the money to support herself and spending it on lavish vacations or services, but all along I was stupid enough to think that that was her money from work. She's been lazy, selfish, and entitled to reapply for a job, and been using money money that isn't hers to support her lifestyle, which she cannot afford, and left me, and I'd imagine over time my father, with nothing. And due to the whole pandemic still raging in the world, I've been unable to do almost anything because things I'd need, like police or CPS, are closed off or are so backed up with work that I've been put on the back of the line. So not only did she never spend anything above mandatory to me, she's been spending my money that was meant for my education and belittles me when she found out that I found out. Funny how different things can seem on the outside, as no one suspected anything. Do these people ever think it through, or is it just like, I'll just keep stealing this money from my daughter for as long as I can get away with it, and yeah, she'll never find out, it'll never happen. You're risking your relationship for the rest of your life with your daughter just for some money. Is it really worth it? So, disclaimer, I was too young at the time to remember what exactly happened, and have to go purely on my vague memory of the information my own mother gave me about this event. This happened when I was around 6 years old. Me, my parents, and my younger brother went to some kind of restaurant that had a pretty big playground attached to it. Now, I was pretty big for my age, and looked more like a 9-year-old than a 6-year-old, but while we were waiting on our food, I went to go play on the playground. I was constantly within eyesight of my mother, so she saw everything. The playground had all kinds of things kids could play on. It also had a second, smaller playground for children under 7, but I wanted to go on the swing. I was only on it for a few minutes when a random woman came to me and demanded that I would play somewhere else because one of her sons wanted to go on the swing, and I was already long enough on it. I wasn't someone who spoke back to people, especially not strangers, and just did as I was told. So instead I went to play somewhere else. I guess my mother didn't bother to come to me when the first thing happened, since I didn't make a problem out of it. But again, only a few minutes passed of me doing something on the playground, and the same woman came to me and said I needed to play somewhere else because it was her son's turn. I remember that I didn't understand why I needed to play somewhere else, since I wasn't sitting on a slide or one-person ride, but again, 6-year-old me didn't complain and just did what I was told. I wanted to go on the kids' playground for kids under 7, and I was 6 at the time, so I was fully allowed to play there, and so I did. When the mother saw me go there, she yelled at me that I wasn't allowed to, since it was only for 7 and under. That's when things started going out of hand. My mother told me that I started crying when the stranger yelled at me for no reason, so she came over to see what was going on. The mother of the 2 boys who were now playing on the spots I was playing before just looked at my mother and told her that she needed to take responsibility over me. She basically went on a rampage on how horrible she was because I was claiming all the playing spots, and because I was going in a part of the playground I was too old for. My mother responded calmly to her and told her that I was only 6, but was quite big for my age. The person didn't believe it and said she was going to tell the manager that I was breaking the rules of the playground. Now that I think of it, that's completely stupid, to be honest. I mean, why would you even do that over a kid's playground? Anyways, my mother just ignored it and took me with her. Our ordered food was shortly after being served anyways. After our meal and after I'd calmed down, my parents decided that I could play some more on the playground before we left. Since I didn't have much luck with that beforehand, I went into that section for kids 7 and under and played there with my brother some more. Unfortunately for us, the woman was still there and started yelling at me and my parents again because I was too old to play there. Someone who worked there came and asked what was going on. The woman started yelling at him too and said he needed to do something about me immediately. The man decided to play it simple and just asked if she had proof that I was too young to play there. Of course, the woman reacted with my height. When that didn't work, she instead started complaining how I told them that they couldn't play on the swing, which was not true. The employee just ignored her and excused himself to us. Apparently the woman and her kids came there every other week or so, and more times than the business would like. She caused trouble, but they couldn't really do much about it. We also later found out that she did things like pretending her sons were twins and both 7 years old, so her oldest son, who was 9, could also play on the kids' playground. Yeah, that woman was angry at me because I was too old to play there, while both her sons, who were older than me, were allowed to play there. We saw them a few times after that, but never really got into trouble with them again, mainly because she was being a duck to other kids. You really have to have some nerve to show that much hypocrisy. Literally the thing you're complaining about to this other kid is the very thing you were doing. And it wasn't even supposed to be a problem. He was supposed to be allowed to play there. The sheer hypocrisy is just infuriating. Submit your story to be read on the channel at VoiceyHereStories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.